Good morning. This is Nick Osmond at the Army Corps of Engineers, Baltimore District. Today, I'm going to run you through how to obtain authorization under the Bay TMDL RGP, which is applicable in Maryland, D.C., Fort Myer, Fort Belvoir, and the Pentagon. As Beth Bacher and Jack mentioned in their portions of our webinar, we see a wide range of applications come in the door here in the Baltimore District for stream improvement projects. These range from stream bank stabilization to traditional habitat restoration projects to benefit specific species or communities. More recently, we have received many applications for projects proposed to provide nutrient and sediment reductions mandated by the Bay TMDL. The Bay TMDL Regional General Permit is only applicable to projects which meet the goals of the Bay TMDL and provide functional lift. So my presentation outline here, first I'm going to help you determine whether your project meets the overall limits of this RGP. This involves quantifying impacts and conversion on your project site. Second, I will provide guidance on how to determine project category. Project category determines the process and required documentation for your project. And third, I'll briefly explain how to obtain authorization. To determine if your project meets the terms and conditions, please see Section 5 and Section 7 of the Bay TMDL RGP, which lists activities authorized and not authorized by the permit. In general, projects must be located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, with the project purpose to fulfill goals in an acceptable watershed implementation plan. Total impacts, temporary and permanent, can't exceed an acre or 2,000 linear feet of stream, rivers, open waters. For proposed stream restoration enhancement projects, degradation criteria for existing streams must be met as described in Section 6 of the RGP. Projects which block aquatic life movement aren't authorized, nor are projects in tidal waters. And 6, projects must not exceed conversion limitations shown in Table 1 of the Regional General Permit. Of these 6, I'm really going to focus on number 3 and number 6, so both your degradation criteria and how to determine conversion to whether you meet Table 1 of the RGP. So this is Table 1 of the RGP. Jack Denny introduced you to this table earlier. To summarize, the RGP authorizes minimal conversion of non-tidal waters to uplands and among aquatic resource types for Bay TMDL projects which provide functional lift. Next, we're going to have to define conversion here. So, for the purposes of this Bay TMDL RGP, conversion is defined as a change from one aquatic habitat type to another aquatic or upland habitat type. One thing to note here is that impacted resources which were replaced in-kind on-site do not count against conversion thresholds. If you impact a quarter-acre of forested wetland, but then establish a quarter-acre of forested wetlands on your site, this would not count against your conversion threshold. I've created a set of tables to help quantify conversion on a project site. These will help you determine whether you qualify for the permit, which category you fall under, and will help you complete Appendices 2 and 3 of the Regional General Permit. Some of you have completed conversion test tables for me in the past. This is the most updated version and will be available on our website. To best illustrate how to obtain authorization under this RGP, I created example project figures using ArcMap. Before I begin the example, I want to point out that while I chose to use ArcMap to create my figures, applicants are free to use a variety of means to display this information. Ideally, the following information is readily discernible in the project plan set on all projects submitted to the Baltimore District. Understandably, plan sets often get busy with details for the construction contractor, so separate figures such as the ones I've created here may be necessary if impact information is not clear from the plan set or the impact figures. Okay, so our first step is identifying our existing waters. In our Contrary Creek example here, we are setting up for a restoration project. We have a perennial stream, Contrary Creek, an intermittent tributary, and 2 forested wetlands within our limit of disturbance, shown in pink. These should be flagged in the field prior to any pre-application meeting with the Corps, MDE, or your state representatives. Next, we need to determine if our streams meet the degradation criteria. In order to ensure that impacts to the aquatic environment are indeed minimal, the RGP only authorizes impacts in degraded waters. Perennial streams must have a BIBI, benthic index of biotic integrity score of 50% or worse. Intermittent or ephemeral streams must have a modified rapid bioassessment protocol score of marginal rapport. Then, to ensure that projects are only proposed on impaired reaches, a hydrogeomorphic degradation criteria must be selected to verify that the reach is impaired. In this case, I elected to use the Banks model, B-high and near bank stress to show that the stream breaches are eroding. For more information on degradation criteria, please see Section 6 of the RGP. Next, we must describe our project impacts and proposed waters. We begin with a figure of our existing waters. We are proposing a restoration project here on Contrary Creek and are relocating it to the center of the valley. Even though the project will be beneficial, there are some impacts associated with it. First, the old channel on the side of the hill will be filled, and we're relocating the stream, which results in 300 square foot impact to forested wetland 1. Additionally, we need to construct a temporary haul road, and it also has a small temporary impact to PFO 1 as well in the form of fill. Next, we propose to design a design for most of Trib 1, which involves building riffle weirs in the stream channel and berms in the floodplain and pounding short reaches of stream channel and the floodplain. We are establishing open water, shown in blue, and enhancing the upper reach of Tributary 1, 350 linear feet of it, by natural channel design. So, our impacts of the work on Tributary 1 include a constructed sand berm, which will fill 200 square feet of PFO2, and by raising the stream bed here, we'll be flooding 250 square feet of PFO2 as well as 250 linear feet of Trib 1. Finally, we are creating PFO3, 600 square feet, to offset our impacts to PFO1 and PFO2. Next, we must compare our existing and proposed waters to determine impacts and conversion. We must describe existing versus proposed waters to understand what kind of changes will occur. You'll see that I started with our 4 existing waters in white and the changes to those. As you recall, we relocated Contrary Creek to the center of the valley. We filled the old channel, so I zeroed that out in white. Then in green, I showed the length added back because I relocated or restored Contrary Creek. In green, you'll also see the newly created PFO3, which helped offset our impacts to forested wetland 1 and 2, as well as the open water created when we flooded portions of Tributary 1. Next, we need to quantify our impacts. Remember that to qualify for this RGP, our impacts cannot exceed 1 acre or 2,000 linear feet of waters of the U.S. It looks like our Contrary Creek example meets this threshold. So does Contrary Creek meet the terms of the Regional General Permit? Now, remember, we have to be located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and the project purpose must be to fulfill goals in an acceptable width. Total temporary and permanent impacts can't exceed 1 acre or 2,000 linear feet, and we must meet our degradation criteria. So, like I ran through earlier, we met our degradation criteria, and our project met the overall limitations of 1 acre and 2,000 linear feet. Then, we met number 4 by designing our project to facilitate aquatic life movement. There are no cascades or dams proposed in this project, which would block movement, and clearly our project is not in tidal waters. That leaves number 6, determining whether we meet the conversion limitations shown in Table 1 of the RGP. I quantified conversion on our site and categorized by aquatic resource type from our existing versus proposed table on the left. In row 1 of the conversion table, I calculated all existing forested wetland area, 5,000 square feet. Then I subtracted all proposed forested wetland area, 4,850 square feet. When I did that, I found that we had a conversion of 150 square feet of forested wetlands. I did the same exercise in row 4, and while there was 30,000 square feet of open waters, no conversion of existing open waters was observed because there were none on site pre-construction. Last, I subtracted proposed stream length from existing stream length and found that we converted 250 linear feet of stream on our site, or 750 square feet. I took our conversion numbers from the previous slide and categorized by total conversion on the project site, conversion to uplands, and conversion among aquatic resource type. You'll remember Table 1 from the Regional General Permit. I compare my conversion numbers to the threshold listed in Table 1 of the Bay TMDL RGP. Again, project category determines process required to obtain authorization. Jack Denny went over these earlier, but in summary, Category 1 projects are all retrofit projects on existing stormwater management facilities and outfalls or concrete line channels, and also you get a little bit of length downstream of those to tie into other waters. Category 2 projects might be a little larger, between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet of waters in the U.S., and you can go up to 500 linear feet of streams. Category 3 projects are much larger. They're those larger than 10,000 square feet, not exceeding an acre of waters, and you can go up to 2,000 linear feet of impacts to streams, rivers, and open waters. What category of the Bay TMDL RGP does Contrary Creek fit under? This is a Category 3 project. So Contrary Creek is a Category 3 restoration and enhancement project. What does this mean for our application process? First, we must fill out Appendix 3 of the Regional General Permit. The tables I just ran you through will help you with this, and those will be available on the website. You need to verify that your streams meet degradation criteria, verify your project is compliant with Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act by including correspondence letters in your application package. Functional lift on site needs to be projected. A handy tool for this is the Stream Functions Pyramid. We also need a temporary impact remediation plan to verify that temporary impacts are indeed temporary, not permanent. An as-built report is due within 90 days of construction completion. Then an annual monitoring report will be required for 5 years, which will include a function-based assessment to verify projected functional lift. Now, had our project been solely a stormwater management retrofit, it might meet a Category 1, and our application process would be a lot less rigorous. You would need to fill out Appendix 2 of the Bay TMDL RGP and attach it to your joint permit application. It would be up to you to self-verify that your project site met degradation criteria. The applicant would be responsible to ensure their project is compliant with Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. You will still need a temporary impact remediation plan. On Category 1 projects, you will probably not hear back from the Corps. On a side note, we will be conducting compliance inspections on a random set of Category 1 projects, so it's important to keep the documentation handy even for the self-verified projects like Category 1s. Category 2 projects are those projects which have a slightly larger scope than Category 1 projects, maybe a small restoration project or a retrofit project with a downstream restoration component of a few hundred feet. For Category 2 projects, you would attach Appendix 2 to your joint permit application. You should not expect to hear back from the Corps on Category 2 projects until the as-built phase. All documentation is due with the as-built report. Category 2 projects do not require 5-year monitoring. Last, we anticipate these ones will be somewhat unusual, but perhaps Category 1 project that got bumped up because of a may affect letter for endangered species. Process and required documentation for Category 3 retrofit projects. These are similar to that for Category 3 restoration and enhancement projects. And the only difference is functional lift may or may not be required, and that'll be project dependent on the project goals of those and the scope. So, how to obtain authorization under the Bay TMDL RGP. To obtain or apply for core authorization on a project that meets the terms and conditions of the Bay TMDL RGP, first review Section 9 of the RGP. Please note, even on projects which are self-reporting to the Corps, applicants must still comply with other federal, state, and local laws and regulations. After reviewing Section 9 of the Regional General Permit, see application instructions by state listed below. So this concludes the Bay TMDL RGP webinar presentation. If you have any questions at this point, feel free to type those in and we'll get back with you shortly. Thank you. So I have a question here. How do I determine if an ephemeral or intermittent stream has a modified rapid bioassessment protocol score qualifying as marginal or poor? The answer to that is regional curves classifying stream reaches as optimal, suboptimal, marginal, or poor based on the modified RDP forms, which are attachments in the Bay TMDL RGP and also available on the website. Will need to be developed, those curves, will need to be developed by the applicant. Applicable data from studies or projects in the same region may be used. For example, from other counties in the coastal plain, you guys will be able to share the same curves. We have another question here. Okay, looks like we've answered that one. Here's another one. What if I want to use other appropriate approved methods for degradation criteria? How do I obtain approval to use an unnamed other appropriate approved metric that demonstrates water quality impairment and stream stability degradation of the project reach? Okay, so an applicant who wants to use an unnamed method for the degradation criteria must get project-specific validation of the method and receive project-specific verification by the Corps for the project's eligibility under any category of the Bay TMDL RGP. We put that in there because we wanted you all to have some flexibility in, telling us how the stream is degraded. For example, if you wanted to do hydraulic models, et cetera, then, we would generally be okay with those. We have another question here. Is biological degradation determined by 50% of the BIBI score, or is it using the qualitative category of fair or less? So it's definitely 50% or less on the BIBI score. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the qualitative category for that, but definitely 50% or less on the BIBI score. They should be the same thing. And we'll look into that some more too on the BIBI scores, but definitely stick to the 50%.
All right, well, good. Thank you, Nick. And let's see, if there are any other questions for us coming in here. Let's see. Okay, I got another one here. Okay, what if existing conditions of a stream don't allow for a PHI for degradation documentation, for example, concrete on the bank?
For concrete banks, I feel like the BI, and I haven't done one on a concrete bank in a little while, but I feel like it can be applied to it, but also there's other metrics to use for that, like you could use bank height ratio if you wanted to. Also, some streams in concrete channels, if the whole channel is concrete, that might need a Category 1 project, and you wouldn't have to demonstrate degradation for a Category 1 project.
Okay, actually, you will have to use the PHI. There is a biological for stream restoration, but if it's a retrofit project, it doesn't need to provide the degradation documentation. If it's a retrofit. Okay. Let's see. Okay. What makes up a single and complete project when multiple activities are proposed within the project area? That's another question. Okay. What makes up a single and complete project when multiple activities are proposed within the project area? So an application should include the single and complete project proposed or accomplished by one owner, developer, or the builder, the stakeholder that has independent utility. And a project may not be piecemeal. To avoid those limits of the RGP authorization, the term independent utility is defined in the RGP. So a project is considered to be single and complete and to have independent utility when it would be constructed absent the constructions of those other parts of the project or those other projects in the area. A portion of a phase project that depends upon other phases of the project do not have independent utility. However, when you have a phase project that one phase of a project that could be constructed even if those other phases are not built, that would be considered a separate single and complete project with independent utility, and an application could be submitted for that one phase of the overall project. So those limits would need to be included in the application. So, for example, a single and complete project may include the retrofit of an online stormwater management pond, the retrofit of the outfall, and 300 linear feet of stream restoration enhancement. The application would need to include all components. However, if the applicant was phasing the work such that the stormwater management retrofits had independent utility and could be constructed absent the stream restoration, then one application may include the stormwater retrofit work and another application may include the stream restoration work. So each application would need to meet, each aspect of each project would need to meet the terms and conditions of the Bay TMDL RGP. Oh, okay. Here's one. What happens if I've already submitted an application prior to the effective date of the Bay TMDL, of the new TMDL RGP? The Corps is going to determine the most appropriate permitting process to use, and it's going to evaluate these pending permit applications that we have currently to use the least expensive and time-consuming review process and still providing that protection for aquatic habitat. An application that was submitted prior to the effective date may be processed under the new RGP if we determine that it is appropriate and least time-consuming review process for that specific project. And then, so for those projects that were authorized or verified prior to the effective date, we're not going to do anything with them. They're going to remain authorized as is. Okay. Are there any other questions? Let's see, I'll give a few more minutes just in case there's any other questions. Okay. So here's one. Why are stream or wetland restoration and enhancement activities implemented for the sole purpose of nutrient or sediment reduction not authorized by the Bay TMDL RGP? So in addition to meeting the TMDL goals, restoration and enhancement projects must also restore functions that support and or enhance aquatic biological resources at the project site to ensure that the activity has no more than minimal adverse impact. So you have to have that list in order to show or to have no more than minimal adverse impacts for a restoration project. And a restoration, by definition, I think Nick has gone over this previously, it is by definition that you have, that you restore and have a functional lift at the end. That is by definition. And, okay, next slide. Okay, we have another one. Will the PowerPoint presentation be available on the website for later reference. And yes, it will be. And in fact, we're being all fancy here, but we're going to have the actual recording as well. So I think you're going to be able to choose from the webinar recording as well as just being able to select the PowerPoints on the website. Thank you for asking that. That was going to be a closing remark. Any other questions? I'll give a few more minutes. All right. Well, I guess that'll conclude, and we're going to try to put together some Q&As as well for the website for your future reference. We're going to use what we had from today as well as any additional ones we think that might be helpful. And as we've said, and everybody said, really, we are looking forward to working with you and discussing any of your questions you may have concerning your project specifics in the future. We want to implement this and have this be really effective for you as well as for us. So this is just one of our beginnings of the outreach that we want to provide to you. So, well, okay. Well, that sounds like I don't think we have any more questions. So great. Thank you to all the presenters and the participants to this webinar. These presentations, like we said before, are going to be posted to our website, and as well as the actual recording is going to also be there. We're going to try. And we look forward to working with you, as we said, with our partners during this implementation stage. So, of the TMDL RGP, thank you very, very much, and have a great day.